The first time Evelyn Cross watched the security footage, she laughed. It was a short, humorless laugh, the kind that escaped her when she saw something mildly disappointing but not worth caring about. The cameras she had secretly installed throughout her mansion were not meant for entertainment. They were there because Evelyn Cross, billionaire real estate tycoon, trusted no one. Not the chefs who handled her food. Not the assistants who smiled too much. And certainly not the new janitor, a quiet single father who worked the night shift while the house slept. She leaned back in her leather chair, ice cold, as the screen showed Daniel Harper pushing a cleaning cart down the marble hallway. He moved carefully, almost nervously, as if afraid to disturb the silence. To Evelyn, he looked like every other struggling man she had hired over the years. Temporary. Replaceable. Invisible. She fast-forwarded. What she saw next made her stop. Daniel paused outside the east wing, the part of the mansion Evelyn never used. He looked around, then gently pushed open a door she had not entered in years. The camera inside flickered on, revealing a dusty room filled with covered furniture and framed photos turned face down. Evelyn leaned forward. Daniel removed his gloves. He didn't steal anything. He didn't snoop. Instead, he walked to a crooked picture frame, wiped it clean, and carefully straightened it. Then he pulled a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something down. Evelyn frowned. She had installed those cameras to catch mistakes. To confirm her suspicions. But this was something else. Something she didn't understand yet. And that unsettled her. Daniel Harper had never imagined his life would shrink so quietly. 5 years earlier, he had a steady job as a maintenance supervisor, a modest home, and a wife who laughed easily. Then came the accident. Then came the hospital bills. Then came the silence after the funeral, broken only by the soft breathing of his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, as she slept beside him because she was afraid of the dark now. Being a single father was not the hardest part. Being poor was. Every day became a calculation. Rent or medicine. Groceries or school supplies. Pride was a luxury Daniel could no longer afford. When the janitor job at Cross Manor came through, he accepted without hesitation. Night shifts. Low pay. No benefits. But it was honest work, and it kept the lights on. What Daniel didn't know was that Evelyn Cross had spent her entire life building walls. Not just around her property, but around her heart. She grew up with nothing. Her father drank. Her mother worked herself into an early grave. Evelyn learned young that kindness did not pay bills, and trust was a weakness. By 45, she was one of the richest women in the country, living alone in a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. The cameras were her insurance. Her way of staying in control. Night after night, she watched the footage. Daniel cleaned thoroughly. Too thoroughly. He picked up loose buttons, aligned rugs, and fixed small things no one had asked him to fix. Once, when a vase cracked, he carefully glued it back together instead of reporting it, afraid of losing his job. Then there were the other moments. One night, the camera caught Daniel sitting on the floor of the kitchen, video calling his daughter during his break. He helped her with homework, his voice gentle and patient. Another night, he found a mouse trap and released the animal outside instead of killing it. Evelyn told herself it meant nothing. But she kept watching. The real turning point came 3 weeks later. It was past midnight when Daniel entered the West Hall. He froze. The camera angle showed a large painting had slipped from the wall and shattered on the floor. It was an original. Worth millions. Evelyn's jaw tightened as she watched him kneel slowly, staring at the broken canvas. She waited for panic. For excuses. Instead, Daniel bowed his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered, even though no one was there. He spent hours trying to fix it. When he realized it was impossible, he wrapped the pieces carefully, labeling them, then left a handwritten note explaining what happened and taking full responsibility. He even offered to have the cost deducted from his salary, a salary that barely covered his rent. Evelyn stared at the screen long after he left the room. She should have fired him. That was what she always did. But something inside her hesitated. The next morning, Evelyn summoned him to her office. Daniel stood stiffly in front of her desk, cap in hand, eyes downcast. He already knew. He had not slept. I saw the painting, Evelyn said flatly. Yes, ma'am, he replied. I understand if you need to let me go. There was no anger in his voice. Just acceptance. Why didn't you lie? She asked. He looked up, surprised. Because it was my fault. That painting was worth more than everything you own combined, she said. I know, Daniel replied quietly. But my daughter watches everything I do. I can't teach her to lie. Evelyn felt something tighten in her chest. An old, unfamiliar sensation. She dismissed him without firing him. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. One night, Evelyn watched as Daniel entered the unused East Wing again. This time, he carried a small box. He opened it and began carefully cleaning the room, uncovering furniture, dusting frames. Then he stopped in front of a photograph. The camera zoomed in. It was a picture of a young Evelyn with her mother. Daniel stared at it for a long time. My Lily has a photo like this, he murmured. She keeps it under her pillow. Evelyn's breath caught. That room had been sealed since her mother died. No staff was allowed inside. No one knew why it existed. And yet this janitor treated it with more respect than anyone ever had. The next day, Evelyn went into that room herself for the first time in years. It was clean. Peaceful. Alive. On the table sat Daniel's notebook. She opened it. Inside were careful notes. Not about valuables. But about repairs needed. About how sunlight damaged the curtains. About preserving memories. At the last page, she found a drawing. A small house. A woman and a child holding hands. Under it, in messy handwriting, were the words, "Everyone deserves a safe place." Evelyn closed the notebook, her hands trembling. That night, she turned off the cameras. The following weeks brought change. Evelyn raised Daniel's pay. Then offered health coverage. When his car broke down, she quietly paid for repairs. When Lily got sick, Evelyn insisted Daniel take time off, paid. Daniel was grateful but confused. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked. Evelyn looked away. "Because I should have done it a long time ago." Then came the final test. A security breach triggered alarms late one night. Evelyn rushed to the control room, heart pounding. Someone was inside the mansion. The cameras came back on. It was Daniel. He stood between the intruder and the main hallway, holding nothing but a mop handle. His hands shook, but he did not move aside. "Leave," Daniel said firmly. "This isn't worth it." The intruder fled. Daniel collapsed onto the floor, breathing hard. Evelyn watched in silence, tears streaming down her face. The next morning, she met him at the door. "You risked your life," she said. Daniel shrugged. "It's my job to protect the place." "No," she replied softly. "It's your nature." Evelyn closed the mansion to staff that day. She invited Daniel and Lily to stay for dinner. Then another. Then permanently. The mansion slowly transformed. Laughter echoed through halls once silent. Lily's drawings replaced expensive art. The East Wing became a family room. Evelyn removed every hidden camera. Trust, she learned, was not a weakness. It was a gift. And the men she hired to clean her floors had shown her how to finally come home.